Pretty usual everything on this channel is for educational purposes only, is not intended as investment advice. Big video, jam-packed video, tons of analysis. Haven't done a video in 2 weeks. Let's take a look at some charts, including some alts at the very end. I'll have timestamps in the video. Almost to 33K subscribers by July. Hit that subscribe button, ladies and gentlemen. And another bit of housekeeping. I do weekly videos for Valkyrie. Check them out. Valkyrie Invest, YouTube channel. More skewed towards news and events, mainly because the TradFi folks don't like to see TA as much, but here on this channel, we love TA. That's why we're going to start with some news first. If you just go down the list, what happened in February alone, kind of mind-boggling. We've got a mix of macro stuff, which I'm not even going to hit on because I'm just a macro LARPer anyway. But this mainly has to do with the Fed's path being less certain. Do they raise? Do they pivot, which isn't going to happen this year? Do they hold rates for some period of time? No landing, soft landing, hard landing. Fly this plane forever. Tons of data points conflicting day after day, day over day. And then on top of all of that, we have this regulatory news that just keeps coming like a fire hose. First, Binance getting targeted with tons of regulations. Anybody in the industry probably isn't surprised by any of that, but they're choking out the banking part of it. They're choking out the stablecoin part of it. They're choking out US customers. So they're slowly picking it apart piece by piece, which depending on your viewpoint here is good or bad for the industry as a whole. Whether or not this will bifurcate crypto, which is going to happen eventually, especially in DeFi. We're going to see ring-fenced DeFi like we've never seen before come down the pipe, and maybe that's good. You know, do we want retail? Do we want an institutional? Do we want a mix of both? Do we want East, West? Doesn't matter. But it's becoming more and more clear that the powers that be do not want anything to be commingled internationally with the US. Then, of course, we have the CBO report that says runaway debt, right? What do you do with that? Well, what is your time horizon here? Your time horizon the rest of your life? What are you going to do in 2030 or 2040 or 2050? Are you going to invest in asset protection or not, right? That's why we're here. Nick Carter put out this great article about choke point stuff. You know, give that a read. Then the SEC goes after Kraken for staking. Then the SEC goes after BUSD with a rumored Wells notice. And then they go after crypto custody. And then they go after, Luna Terra, which I guess better late than never. But this has implications for staking as a service in the US. This has implications for wrapped assets, which is basically all of DeFi, including wrapped ETH, wrapped BTC. This has implications for sort of derivatives of stablecoins, which Binance Peg USD was. Binance admitted that it was under collateralized. So there's a wrapped asset issue. There's a derivative of stablecoins issue. BUSD is basically dead. It's never going to be minted ever again. It's only going to ever decrease. And then again, we have this mix of like macro stuff. We have this Hong Kong news, which maybe was bigger than people thought it was. I don't really know how to gauge that. More Binance stuff, more Mongkok stuff, just back and forth, right? Bullish, bearish, bullish, bearish. I think going after wrapped assets is interesting, especially for staked ETH. Of course, Coinbase saying, look, nothing on our platform is a security, not the staking, not any of the coins, nothing is a security. Everything's totally fine here. And then, oh, by the way, as we're doing QT here, China's doing a bunch of QE, so where's all this money coming from? Why is everybody bullish? Is it Asia? Another East versus West conversation. So just the quick rundown, winners and losers over the past couple weeks. Definitely offshore developers. Definitely anything that is Bitcoin related. TradFi custodians, banks, offshore stables. Rather huge inflows, and it looks like Binance is basically playing hot potato, whack-a-mole with BUSD into TUSD. Losers, potentially altcoins, DeFi, right? Is anything wrapped? DEXs may just be off the table for Americans eventually. Stables in general, under threat here. And then any combination of offshore, onshore exchanges, I think they're going to take a hard look at and potentially say that just isn't feasible, right? There's many of them. There was FTX, there Bittrex, Binance obviously is the biggest one currently. But I'm guessing they're going to have some very specific rules put into place regarding that sort of stuff. That's all just the news. Quickly, now the fun stuff. All TA, the rest of the video. Starting with the S&P because, again, macro kind of rules the roost in the United States for the entire world. Realistically, at least it has. S&P on a technical basis had a bullish 50-200 cross, breached that diag. Still looks fine-ish. Doesn't look bearish by any means. Sort of stalled out here at the neckline. if you want to call this an inverted head and shoulders, which I do. Multi-month target for this, just based on technicals, is up here. But, you know, everybody, and I mean everybody, is bearish macro. Not saying they're wrong. They're bearish fundamentals, right? Earnings, recession. Every day I see another data point that's more and more bearish. Inflation is still going up. Nobody's bullish. I don't know a single bull other than maybe one other guy who looks at TA and doesn't pay attention to anything else. But nobody is bullish on the S&P. So you sort of have to keep that in mind for the entirety of the crypto ecosystem, because it sort of roughly aligns with macro. For Bitcoin, though, again, everything looks bullish just as it did 2 weeks ago. It just looks more bullish than it did 2 weeks ago. We are finally out of this multi-month bearish pitchfork. Maybe we set up for some sort of inverted head and shoulders situation, which is super easy to trade. Otherwise, you're just waiting for higher highs here. We have a pivot. We have a target of somewhere around 33K by July coming up. But everything looks great. Really, ultimately, what you don't want to see is anything below 20K, and that's where bulls start to get nervous. Bears start to get happy. But just looking at this alone, looks completely fine. And kind of you're rooting for a pullback here to 20-ish, right? Even sub 20 would be okay. Now this would be a massive inverted head and shoulders, but it's not there. And if we want to do multi-time frame cloud analysis, which I will do for some alts at the end as well, this looks bullish, right? This is the reason why I cloud, because you just look at this and you instantly know, okay, it's above the cloud, bullish 50, sorry, not a bullish 5200 cross, bullish TK cross, and you're up 25% since the Kumo breakout. So, you know, what else do you want? We were bearish the entire year, and I mean the entire year. There was never a chance, aside from Terra Luna shenanigans, where things looked semi-bullish. We had this ascending triangle. We had this, inverted head and shoulders that didn't play out. We had tons of potential up here. It just didn't happen. Multiple failed potential Kumo breakouts, which I don't think we've ever seen on the daily. So all that is over. We're post Adam and Eve now, and I don't really see anything here per se. Maybe you could argue some sort of bear div. Bids on the Kijun, happy days, go touch some grass. I mean, what else do you want, right? This looks fine. Going into Q2, I think it's going to be a mess based on macro. They're probably going to raise rates 50 instead of 25. They're already hinting at that. That's going to make the markets very angry, including Bitcoin. But we have about a month to do something cool on the upside. On the 4 hour, again, you can just pay attention to Kumo breakouts. You know, if you know we're bullish on high time frames, this goes for anything, then the lower time frames really do help you with exits and entries. And again, since that Kumo breakout, this is what you want to see if we are bullish. You expect upside continuation. You expect upside surprises. You expect patterns to resolve in a bullish manner, right? This is what a bull market looks like. This, you could argue, some sort of ascending triangle. You can see it sort of hinted at this inverted Adam and Eve, and it didn't quite get there. So again, that's what you want to see. You want to see bearish patterns get invalidated, or bearish patterns like this mess of a, you know, maybe head and shoulders break down and gain some steam again, right? This was the Hong Kong news, allegedly, that did this, even though that news was released on the 13th. So we still look good here on the 4 hour. Zooming way out on the weekly, ultimately, this is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at a past halvings. We have a halving coming up in just over a year, April-ish 2024. We want to be back in the weekly cloud by halving, and I think we're fine, right? That's ultimately what we've seen previous 2 halvings, and Bob's your uncle. We're laughing off to the bank. Every time people say, oh, it can't happen again, people in 2017 say, oh, it can't happen again, it happened in 2013. People in 2020 say, oh, it can't happen again, and it happened in 2017. So people have always been saying, death to Bitcoin, this is awful, it's never going to keep going up, and each cycle proves them wrong. So I do like all-time highs in a similar fashion around halving 2024, sorry. And if we want to look at where could this go, 200K. You know, this is the Bitcoin power law corridor. Didn't quite get there with the rehypothecation nonsense, arguably out of FTX in the last cycle. This indicator was built based on the previous 3 all-time highs, and it gives us this band projection. So 200K is reasonable, and we can look at other things like how bullish are we. We're still below the 200-day moving average. Sorry, 200-week moving average. These are the B bands here. We're above the 20-week moving average, and really I wanted to show this because we had the first ever 200 week bear cross a while ago. We still haven't recrossed bullish yet. So that is also something to watch for. I know a lot of people were talking about the 5200 weekly death cross. To me, this one's more important because it's never happened before, ever. We've never spent this much time below the 200 week moving average. So we're getting there slowly but surely. And if you hate the cloud, if you hate everything else I've ever talked about, check out the alligator fractal system, because again, on the weekly, we are starting to see very bearish flip to bullish for the first time in a year. There aren't many other indicators that look different, even the on-chain stuff, right? MVRV, no matter what you're looking at, it's going to kind of look like this. When price is up 50% from the bottom, it's going to look like things are starting to be bullish again. And on the daily chart, it's a little noisy to do the alligator fractal stuff, but ultimately, when we are trending, when we're not ranging, when we're actually trending, it's very useful for giving you trailing stop losses. So high, low, high gets a little red hat here. Low, high, low gets a green hat. And the idea is you're adding in a bull trend when we're above the fractal, above the MAs after each successive fractal break, and your trailing stop loss is down here. So this got you out on this candle, got you back in, arguably potentially here, depending on how you wanted to trade this. So it's a little bit more action forward than the cloud on the upside, because it doesn't just say that the trend is bullish, it tells you where your entries would be, where your continuation entries are. So currently it's, the next higher high. Not exactly rocket science, but it does help lay it out for you. And then I do want to hit on the ordinal stuff real quick. This stuff sort of came and went. Maybe it was a fad, maybe it was a flash in the pan. We'll see what happens when we actually have a bull cycle, but it's interesting that it had a pretty measurable effect in the fee market at the very least. Not really for me, but it adds a utility to Bitcoin that wasn't there before. Moving on to ETH, same thing. A lot of these charts, very similar, right? Above the cloud, above the 200, 1500 bull cross. For ETH, I like 2000 as the next level up. That's the yearly pivot. That's the range high. And then from there, 2600 to 3000 based on the measured move. Nothing crazy. And as always with anything, if we are ranging or range bound for an extended period of time, and we start to flip one way or the other, you can go way up on the time frames, go to the 3-day, and it'll start to give you, levels for 50% retracements essentially. So the 3-day cloud likes 2250-ish based on this, edge to edge move. ETHUSD on alligator fractals, very similar to the Bitcoin pair, BTC USD. It's telling you trailing stop losses that were great. It gets you out right here, and doesn't tell you necessarily to get back in yet. So you haven't had a candle close above a previous bull fractal. So we're still waiting on that for ETH, but not really rocket science when you understand how this works. You can sort of do it without using the indicators. But again, it just helps me especially just see where those levels are at all times. Very similar to the 4-hour cloud in that case. ETH on the weekly, again, looks bullish, right? Can't deny that. Look at any MA system, any indicator. Most of this stuff is going to look bullish as it starts to chop towards the top end of the range or break range highs. And that's just how this works. The question is, can this remain bullish in the face of potential macro headwinds coming from the Fed and QT, the world falling apart, all that stuff? Can we still be bullish in the face of all that? That's the ultimate question, because all this stuff looks extremely bottomy to me. This is the 2-year MA multiplier cut in half, so it's actually the 1-year MA multiplier in ETH's case. And again, things look like we are ready to put the bottom behind us. Top side on this, 9,000, 10,000. It's going to curve up and down over time, dependent on how long we just chop around at these lows. But it's hard to slice this and be bearish in any way. And if we zoom in on the 4-hour, I've been looking at this same chart for months now, and I don't think it's necessarily white coffee and accumulation strictly, but it does look familiarly similar. What's most interesting to me is that since the ETH burn mechanism was added, we really haven't gone anywhere on Ethereum. And you could argue, we haven't seen enough burning yet to make a difference. Obviously, FTX complicates things, but it would not surprise me to quickly test 2000 and figure our stuff out from there and just take off. Because once ETH starts burning, this is the current supply, right? And if you're bullish Bitcoin based on similar supply dynamics, not necessarily a burn mechanism, but a disinflationary mechanism, a deflation mechanism, then it's hard not to be bullish on that in ETH's case, right? Obviously, fundamental differences aside, ETH has the potential to outburn any current Bitcoin deflation, disinflation. It's a matter of regulations around ETH, around staking, and just general narratives. Right now, the narrative is anything not altcoins, definitely. I mean, look at what's happened in February. On the ETH BTC chart, we're certainly sort of starting to tip to the bottom of the realistic range that we've been in. We're kind of tipping out of this pitchfork, which does worry me for the ETH BTC narrative. But it would not surprise me once we start to actually get bullish and not range bound that ETH outperforms BTC. At least until Shanghai or some news about Shanghai or some clarity on the dates there. I think that's also causing people to get a little nervous looking at the amount of ETH that's getting unlocked potentially, right? Again, this is kind of like an overblown thing, but that is a supply unlock. That is an overhang on the future of ETH in the near term. So until we get a finalized date, until that's past us, maybe people start to get more comfortable with ETH just on a fundamental basis. But regulation's obviously huge. Now, this is where I lose half of you probably and start talking about alts. I'm just going to rapid fire a bunch of these and summarize it at the end. But really what I'm looking for is, are we above the 200 on the daily? Are we above the cloud? And is there any other ancillary notes, regulatory stuff to think about, right? Now, if you're just trading technicals, you don't care about the SEC. You don't care about any government action anywhere. You're looking at price, you're looking at indicators, and that's it. If I'm on my deserted island and I don't know anything about the SEC, charts like this look great. We're above the 200, we're above the cloud. We're about to be unrange bound here on BNB. This chart looks very similar to ETH, USD. So certainly looks bullish. But knowing that they're going after Binance, would I be bullish and super optimistic on pending huge regulatory enforcement and actions? Not really. So, allocate appropriately. If you think I'm wrong, go all in, right? I don't know what to tell you. Ripple's the same thing, right? It's junk, it's a scam, it shouldn't exist, it's nonsense. They continually try to throw FUD at Bitcoin and proof of work. But on technicals, right, it's about to be above the cloud. It's about to be above the 200. It's kind of range bound nonsense. Like, this is not the kind of chart I want to trade, but some people do, right? You could argue Adam and Eve. You could argue, it's W double bottom. It's got some time. I'd look back at it maybe above 55 cents. ADA also, I think, is mainly junk. It's proof of stake. I don't think there's anything real there. I think it's all vaporware. Technicals, though, above the 200, above the cloud. This is exactly what you want to see when, at least I, as a trend trader, want to take this trade. Bearish for over a year. And this week, we are finally above the cloud, above the 200. I don't know what better entry setups people want than this, right? More importantly, it hasn't chopped around the cloud. It hasn't chopped around the 200. So this is definitely a trend shift. Now, it may chop around going forward, right? I can't predict the future, but trend-wise, looks great. Matic, all sorts of bullishness on this chart, way above the 200, way above the cloud. It is involved with some sort of Chinese MLM Ponzi that's acquired a metric ton of Matic, surpassing even the Binance wallets. So keep that in mind, but chart does look bullish on trend. It's basically retraced the entirety of 2022, right? It's saying what bear market? Extremely strong and continues to lead all of the alts, I'm pretty sure. Doge, again, a meme, a joke, doesn't really have a reason to exist. Elon's just, it's Elon's plaything. So keep that in mind, right? But on technicals, you could argue there's some sort of triangle potentially resolving soon, already above the 200. Cloud is just sort of lukewarm on it. Definitely not bullish in that fashion. And what was driving this previously was retail. Do we think retail has a bunch of money that they're going to go YOLO long on Dogecoin? I don't think so, but if you do, maybe this is a trade for you. And something else to consider, for most of Doge's life, it's lived between 20 and 100 sats, and it's currently at 350 sats still, so it's a 3x multiple, and then some above the previous multi-year range high. So I think it's got some time to come down here still. So that would be an avoid for me. Sol, tons of baggage, like Zcash, which I'll talk about in a second, because people are talking about Zcash for some reason, but Sol, like ADA, right? I don't know which is the bigger silly nonsense scam. I think Sol at least has more people trying to do something on it. Whether that's, you know, unregulated gambling casino stuff is up to you, but on technicals, looks great. Look at this. It's above the 200 for the first. This is today. This day, the 20th. It's above the 200, above the cloud. Technicals look amazing. What else do you want, right? Tons of supply overhang, tons of issues with FTX, right? Sure. Keep that in mind, right? Size appropriately, allocate appropriately. If that bothers you, if that is a problem, right? Not saying it shouldn't be, but things to keep in mind other than the technicals are the baggage with FTX. DOT also looks very good. Above the 200, above the cloud. What else do you want, right? Again, you could say maybe the utility isn't there, maybe the users aren't there, maybe the economics don't make sense, the fundamentals, the tokenomics. That's fine. I'm not saying I disagree. I'm just saying, look, the technicals speak for themselves, okay? That looks amazing. LTC, kind of like Matic on the technical side, where it just continues to get bought up for some reason. Couldn't be more opposite from Matic in a utility perspective. At least Matic has people doing something with it. Whether you agree with that something is up to you, but LTC, I don't see anyone doing anything with LTC other than trading it. So again, keep that in mind, but trend looks pretty good. AVAX, much like DOT, looks great. Got beaten up on Terra Luna stuff, got beaten up on FTX stuff. Finally starting to turn a corner. Again, tons of baggage here, but looks great on technicals. And again, you can always move it up and down on the cloud settings to sort of check in the imaginary profit calculator where this could go. And all this is really telling you is a 50% retracement from high to low. But if you're looking at the flat cloud, the flat Kumo, it does hint at a potential move above 50. So that's a 2x easy, assuming things are bullish, right? Big assumptions there. Tron, a chart I don't normally look at, but I thought, why not? Above the 200, above the cloud, has some sort of resolving triangle here. Looks pretty good, right? I mean, the thing about Tron is definitely an east versus west separation, and definitely plays a huge, enormous part in Tether transactions. It is the backbone of Tether transactions because it is so cheap to send transactions, right? Now, you may have issues with the chain fundamentally, and that's fine, but the technicals here look quite good. Where could this go? Again, just some 50% retracement. 10 to 11 looks about right, but I don't know. You'd have to measure it out. It looks pretty good. Uni, kind of the same thing with the resolving diagonal here. Above the 200, above the cloud. I like a 2x on Uni. It's DeFi, so you got to keep that in mind with regulations, right? Maybe this doesn't perform as expected. Maybe it's not as bullish as expected. If you think the US is the center of the universe for DeFi, which that may change over time. But this looks good on technicals. Link, this is a super old pitchfork on Link that I was harassed. I was sent death threats from the Marines saying that the bull trend was over when we got out of this thing. And joke's on them. Look where it is now. So this is still ranging. You know, it's less exciting comparing it to DOT or AVAX, and that gets into like the rotation conversation. Again, this is DeFi, so maybe there's some regulations for oracles coming. Who knows? But this is really ultimately unexciting until it's back above 10, you know. On trend metrics, it looks good. It's at the top of the ranges-ish. It's above the cloud. It's above the 200. And even on the 2-day, you know, you can sort of bounce around when stuff's ranging this long on the cloud and see, are we there yet? And the cloud is kind of saying, yeah, we're almost there. Where there's this expectation of a move at the very least to the top of the range. But again, it's spending all this time below this high time frame cloud, below this 400-day moving average is what this is. So it's looking pretty good. Zcash, again, I don't know why people are talking about this. This chart looks atrocious to me. I don't know why you would touch this relative to anything else. This has the most baggage of any coin, maybe in the history of anything that's still listed. I just don't know why you'd bother. It's got this privacy component that is opt-in and will never be used on exchanges. It's just not going to happen for regulatory reasons. So it's not going to get widely listed. It's just not going to happen. And if you think the utility is there based on the privacy, then that's not going to happen either because exchanges aren't going to enable that. So yeah, this is how it looks on non-log. I don't know. Just do some paper trading on it, see where it is in a year, and then tell me what you think. But this is just a massive avoid for me. And on the BTC chart, it's nearing all-time lows. So I just, I don't see the argument. I'm sorry. And, you know, the Monero people are kind of the same. They think the Bitcoin people are dumber than a box of rocks and don't get it and don't understand and how dare you. But again, ultimately, if this thing isn't widely available, or traded, no one's going to buy it. So I'm bullish on Monero too. I love the tech, but ultimately it's just not going to get listed in many places. And I'm kind of still surprised that it's listed on Kraken in the US at all. So I love Monero. It's just the reality is we're not there yet on trading this stuff. And it's got supply issues potentially because you can't audit the supply. That's the fundamental argument against something like this. It also has tail emissions, which is an interesting experiment. You could say you're bearish on tail emissions, but it is not like Bitcoin in that way. So we'll see what ends up winning years to come. But trend-wise, this looks pretty good. That's a 2-day. This is Monero BTC. Doesn't look super hot. So really you have to always ask yourself when you're trading alts relative to King Corn is, will this thing outperform Bitcoin on a relative basis? What is the general vibe of the market right now? And what are the forward vibes? Do we expect, with all the regulations coming, potentially alts to get easier to trade, more available, more YOLO betting, or not? That's kind of where we're at. So I expect BTC dominance to continue to outperform, especially if stablecoins get hammered, because you're going to see an exodus out of stablecoins. Initially, they're going to get regulated, buttoned up, and I think the next cycle is going to see some sort of fully institutionalized stablecoin, fully regulated, blah, 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 do really well, but we're not there yet. So just looking at all the alts to summarize, take your notes. This takes like 2 seconds to do, and adjust allocations accordingly. If you're bearish proof of stake, keep that in mind. If you're bullish regulations, right? If you think I'm wrong on everything, or if you just like meme coins, right? But it helps to just have a guide on the technicals first and then sort of pick apart, am I bullish on Binance in the next 6 months? Is that really going to affect the token? Like, is that even going to matter? Ask yourself questions like that. That's all for this one. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and happy trading.